For artists, by artists. Artist Journal, February 17th, 2023. Broadcasting to the world from Berlin, Germany. My name is Adrian Pocobelli. And when I say artist, I mean everybody. I mean, because you might say, oh, I'm a collector. Is this not for me? Or I'm just watching this show. Is this not for me? I mean the artistic side of your soul. I think we all have creative outlets. I think the artist has been over-mystified over the last, give it 200 or 300 years. And now there is something to be said for the artist, but there's something to be said for that part of our, for lack of a better term, soul, I would argue. So good morning. another wonderful coffee meeting we are having here today. Anyways, let's get into it. And it is probably going to be a short show today. There's not as many tabs here, which maybe is refreshing. I mean, it's kind of refreshing for me. I'm excited to see how this goes. So anyways, uczine. Uczine has released a new work, and I think it's really interesting, obviously, which is why I'm starting with it today. And it's interesting for several reasons. First of all, it's interesting because he deviates from it's actually not a deviation from his traditional style. I mean, but when you think of an uczine, you think oftentimes of this kind of semi-representational work of like the guy in the cloak or, whatever you want to call it, the friar's garb, whatever you want to call it. But to be fair, he's always been doing this kind of semi-abstract, but not quite abstract, but with like a lot of digital noise in it kind of works. And so, again, what I like about that is it shows a range. And I like range a lot. I mean, some people are very want artists to stick to their very narrow focus, but I like range a lot. And so uczine here is showing his range. So that's one thing. It's not, the classic, what we might call classic uczine, but it kind of is actually, because he's been releasing works like this for a long time. But what I also like about this is the interesting kind of technical side of it. Like if I'm out to take out my magnifying glass and look up close here and say, Adrian, how was this made? And I would say, well, it appears that he is using several layers here. And for example, like you see here, this looks like, Petsky or ASCII, like where the numbers come in. This looks like a ASCII kind of layer here. And then so you see the 3. But this here seems like a different kind of layer or kind of format or a different kind of method is being employed. And it's all unified, however, and again, I'm just pure speculation here. I would say it's all unified by the fill tool. The fill tool over several layers, one of my favorite techniques, which I think is completely underutilized. And this may not be what's going on here, but this is what I would, if you were to ask, and I'd say I see the fill tool being employed across multiple layers, because what that does is you're able to put several different kind of references or even several different techniques, and you can start to sample from those different layers and just take elements of those layers. So you see the P, and that's why it's so kind of flat. That's why you get these super kind of like they're just flat colors. These are samples, I would argue, of different layers. Now, I could be totally wrong here, but that is another thing though I like about this piece. And I also like the interesting color, which has this kind of almost this muted red. Like interesting, we could call these classic uczine color combination here, classic palette from uczine. And the commentary is awesome. I mean, we see this beautifully distorted skull here. And again, this looks like, sampled, but unified with the S and the T and the O and the P, as the same colors that are being employed or being, the mask that are being revealed through the mask. It appears to be the same colors at the same time. So unifying stop with the skull. I better hurry here because this is not going to be a short episode at this rate. And I don't know what this is. I mean, it almost looks like a rainbow, but basing it on the work, maybe it's more like headphones or just the, the mental, a representation of mental, like the brain and activity here, radiating out. And these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful distortions here. Here kind of, and there's variety in the distortions. Like here they're kind of, edgy. These seem to be unified here, the 3 and the top up here, and they're unified in color as well. So maybe another clue. Whereas here, it seems to be a different layer, for lack of a better term, and a different kind of distortion. I could be totally wrong. So just speculation over here. A beautiful work and a great title. A promoted story type title here. One life hack you should know about. And that was my first show in Berlin, was Promoted Stories. And I'm a huge fan of these little ads that are at the bottom of news articles that you'll often find. 8 books that Elon Musk thinks you should read is one of the classic ones. I think it reveals something because they're designed as kind of clickbait. And I think these stories actually reveal something about human nature on a large scale. Because if they are in fact effective, which they probably are, they're probably tested to the hilt, these promoted stories reveal something about ourselves, because by virtue of the fact of what is being shown, because that is probably what works with the masses. So those are clues, one could argue, into human nature. Moving on, we have a comment from uczine as well, and it's always wonderful to hear from the artists, especially an artist like uczine. So this is hilarious. Grew up reading, examining museum catalogs with lots of religious paintings. So I really like how they are exaggerated, theatrical most of the time. And we were talking about the work from yesterday where I think The Essence of Tyranny, remember that work with the child with the stop sign and the parent telling the child to stop, basically. So that is really interesting, and maybe, again, explains some of the friar-like imagery and references that we often find in uccine's work. And into this theatricality, it is interesting. That work that we were looking at yesterday, that it was based on, the Karl Bloch, and I don't want to go too far in case people haven't seen that episode, but there is a theatricality that's almost like Norman Rockwell. I wonder if I have the search saved here, Karl Bloch, because we just looked at it yesterday. Or maybe I have the name wrong, but there's almost a Norman Rockwell type theatricality there. So anyways, interesting comment from uczine. And, this is another movie I haven't seen, if you can believe that. I've seen Star Wars. I've seen actually a few movies, but I have seen The Truman Show, shout out to Gogolitis, but I haven't seen American Psycho. By the way, huge American Psycho reference there with Huey Lewis and the News cassette tape. That was my first cassette tape, so yeah, that's hilarious. I know about the movie, and it looks great. I think I have to see that. So anyways, thank you to Polly Jojo and Billy Joe, who I think is also known as Johan. Thank you for bidding and Johan for winning Bacchanal. I was thrilled to see it go to you, and yeah, that went for 40 Tezos, and I think it's just, again, a wonderful thing. You can, make a sketch on your iPad and sell it there out into the world, and someone is willing to give you 40 Tezos, $45, $50 for it. That is a beautiful thing, which I am incredibly grateful for. Out in the Berlin art scene, they would just be, I would think a lot more people would be interested in what we're up to if they realized, what was going on from just a market financial perspective. A lot of artists are putting out 4 or 5 works a week, bringing in, a few $100 a week, sometimes a lot more, in some rare, occasionally a lot more. So that is exciting. So anyways, big shout out to you guys. And yeah, I'm working on several right now and all sorts of stuff. So I'm excited to be working more in the trenches again. A few interesting comments here from last show. So first of all, on the signature subject, which is just a hilarious, it's a fun subject. Rosatio Talking about signatures, I completely agree. In my opinion, it is equally essential to sign our digital work as it is to sign our physical work. It's important to ensure that the signature blends in aesthetically with the artwork. Personally, I sign my digital art as well, sometimes in a subtle way that requires closer inspection. I've actually noticed that. Or by incorporating the signature as an integral part of the artwork. Without the signature, the artwork feels incomplete, as you mentioned. Yeah, it very much does depend on the artwork, and I think it works particularly well with Rosetto's style because there's kind of a drawing element. So I think it really lends itself well to the signature. Yeah, so as I wrote, like it makes me think twice. Like maybe I should be signing my digital work. I don't think I've ever signed my digital work that I can think of. But, you know, again, what are you signing it with is sort of like the question. Like, are you going to use a pencil, an Apple Pencil? Are you going to do like Gogolitis, which is kind of like pixel form? Like to me, the natural way of signing to a certain degree is with the pixel form, but it wouldn't always work. Or maybe you just put an AP, in my case, just, you know, a small AP kind of stamp. Who knows? But, or maybe you do a fill, like we were just talking about, on a layer. You do a fill of your actual signature and you put that in. Hard to say, right? Like, I mean, because I think the debate is look at uccine's work. Like, do you want to see uczine at the bottom in a signature? I'm not sure I do in an interesting way. I'm not sure that does add. So I think it's a case-by-case basis. I think, for, you know, in Rosetto's work, it works really well, in my opinion. So I think it really depends on the work. And say with pixel art, with Gogolitis, I think it works wonderful. Right? So anyways, it's a very, very fun, interesting discussion there. And thank you, Skomra, for the comment here. I collected a few works that you went over. I appreciate the work you put in. Thank you. And Runetune with a very interesting comment. We're talking about MoMA. I totally agree. We have talked about this many times, how the institutions like MoMA and other major museums are missing out on an opportunity to showcase not only digital and NFT art, but art that is topical and happening now. Why wouldn't a museum want to have at least a singular corner of a room that is dedicated to showcasing art that is relevant down to the last 24 hours? Much like a newspaper such as the New York Times will cover things happening now and continue to follow relevant stories as they develop. In a weird way, that is kind of this show, isn't it? I mean, I joke this isn't a news program, and it isn't a news program. This really is just because I can't credibly make a news program about NFTs because it's just one person's opinion. It's like, but I take your point. Like in a sense, that it is kind of similar to what we do here. Adrian, perhaps you ought to create your own job and throw a bid into something like MoMA or the Whitney and see if they will hire you to be their artist reporter, digital art curator. Seriously. So it's a fun idea. I mean, you know, weirdly, I'm like, you might find this hard to believe, but I'm actually more happy here. Like in a sense, like I'm offering an alternate narrative here. And put it this way. I mean, let's go back to the roots. This show, the reason I started this show is because I wanted to create something that where I had complete say over everything. I was the executive producer, the publisher, I fund this thing, you know, like I want complete control because as we all know, when we go out and get jobs, we're not. And we often have to make all these compromises with, you know, all these people we're collaborating with. And I'm a huge fan of just, you know, it's liberating because it's all fun. Because I decide on the content. And if I decide I want this to be about, you know, stamps and trading cards tomorrow, I can actually make that decision, you know, like, and so I love that. Whereas if I go to MoMA, how long is it going to be before I get a knock on the door or a call saying, you know, that last episode you did, we're not so happy that you showed Turkarak's work because, you know, that's too offensive for XYZ, right? And all of a sudden, you know, before you know it, once you start taking money from people, it's like you no longer have your sovereignty, right? So I think the part of the reason this show works is because I just have sovereignty. I can, you know, and so it's kind of a liberated person to a certain degree who can kind of do whatever they want. And I think I would lose that. So that's why if they invited me to do something temporary, sure, I'd be more than happy to. And I think it'd be wonderful for everybody involved, especially myself. But in terms of a regular thing, no. You might be surprised to say, like, I'm kind of, and in a sense, like, finally, because this relates to everybody, artists out there, there's also an ambition side to this. And is my ambition simply to, work for the MoMA and do, like, for some people it is, but, as an artist, we have to play for all the marbles in a sense. And I don't mind if I lose at that game in the big picture, but in terms of ambition, you have to play for all the marbles as an artist, if you know what I'm saying. So me kind of going into Whitney or MoMA and sort of running their kind of digital art thing, or doing just a little bit of curatorship, in a weird way, and maybe you find this delusional, my ambition is greater than that. And I'm okay if it doesn't work out that way. But from a personal point of view, you got to play for all the marbles, and I'd rather be on the pirate ship out there and them just hearing at some point, maybe 3 years from now, there's a pirate ship out there, and I think they're getting closer. And I'd much rather be on that pirate ship and have that story, So anyways, thank you, everyone. And thank you for the comments, especially Santiago here. Cool as always. Not completely in agreement as always, though. And that's super cool. I'm not married to my opinions out here. So feel free to disagree. I will try not to take it personally. I may not agree with you. But I totally welcome that, and I welcome that you still like it, but you don't disagree with it. I'm 100% for that here. We are, I am, not to go too far deep, but I am all about the conversation, ultimately a Platonist at the end of the day, so I welcome the feedback. I'm much more Socratic in spirit than, I'm not invested in my opinions. It's sort of like they say, strong opinions, lightly held, right? Something like that, right? And I think it's a wonderful place to be. So anyways, thank you everybody for the comments. Debbie T. So this is like a full circle moment for me. And we're going to get to the art right away here. I realize we're on minute 17 here. Wowzer, I just saw this video, Pocobelli. Thank you for the very nice comments. It's so refreshing and encouraging to see fellow artists talking about NFT artworks. Really enjoyed your videos. So this is a full circle moment for me because Debbie T is one of the first artists I discovered on Object and on the Tezos platform. And I've always loved her work. And just the kind of celebration of NFT culture. Like I put up a show, as I was saying a few weeks ago at Zed Bar here in Berlin, and I was very proud to put her works up because as you see here in this work here, she's, JPEGs, like she really kind of celebrates the NFT culture in such a beautiful way with beautiful, beautiful works that anyways, this is kind of a full circle moment for me. So it was really nice to hear from her. I consider her a star from my perspective of this scene, a big star. And not a number here, or NAN, thank you. This is just a beautiful comment also. So thank you for all the beautiful comments, everyone. I wouldn't be in this space if it wasn't for your show. I love how you're applying old school art thinking to the craziness of what's going on here. And I never thought of it that way. Like I do think of it in terms of contextualizing the NFT. Like, I guess part of it, it is about contextualizing it within the tradition. What's going on, because I see a lot of similar themes and topics which frankly aren't being discussed. So there's a space for that. And so anyways, that's really a great comment and just interesting perspective. Okay, on to what's going on out in the big world out there. Magic Poser. Okay, hilarious name. This is an app, and I wanted to show this because, this is quite, let me turn off the volume here. It's quite, I just think of models and you're doing, or just references if you're building an artwork and you want to have a model of sorts. This thing looks like it'll perfectly, it'll give you the light, you can decide how much hair or how big the body is, the gender, everything. I just thought that was a super interesting app from an art perspective. And it looks like you just move it around. You want the hand open or closed. A very interesting tool. So anyways, just wanted to point that out. RJ with a gorgeous work, another Edward Hopper inspired work. And I think he said in a tweet, this is the last work, and I almost shed a tear here, of the computer art collection. I wish he'd just go on and on and on. And look at this gorgeous, gorgeous light here. So in the window, a computer, and this is based on it's called New York Computer, based on Hopper's New York office. And let's just take a quick look here, what that looks like. And here it is. So a woman in the window here. Yeah, look at that light. I mean, one of the cool things about RJ's work is he makes me appreciate some of these paintings that I never might have appreciated before. Really amazing painter, Edward Hopper, isn't he? And all these different versions here. So anyways, very cool. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And just a beautiful work. Higher reserve, 0.4 ETH on this one. So get them while you can. And another computer still life, and this had an interesting kind of enigmatic title for me a little bit, from Yuri J. St. Jerome messing around in console. Now, St. Jerome is often portrayed, and we're going to look in a second here, with a tiger. And I believe he was the guy who maybe transcribed the Bible or something, or wrote down a bunch of stuff. So he's often seen writing stuff down. So anyways, so there are references here to St. Jerome and at a computer, and another computer, interestingly, and I love these computer still lives, and even the power bar. Again, the furniture of our lives here, the furniture of our minds. I love this modern iconography here, and like the computer speakers and everything. So a really, really interesting, enigmatic interior, I guess we would say, from Yuri J. And look at these interesting religious windows here, or stained glass windows. And interesting textures here too, as ever. So beautiful work, 200 Tezos, edition of 15. Maybe this was released a while ago. Oh no, last week, so we missed it. So the value of relisting your works, I feel like I don't get all the notifications here. This sold for 15 on primary, so this is the last one. Buy it for 200. Now here is St. Jerome, and he is always writing here, and he's often portrayed with a skull, and there is the lion there, if you can see that. And we're going to bring up the Leonardo in a second, and there's the lion. Okay, so a reference to St. Jerome. And here is St. Jerome here with the lion. And of course, yeah, and there's a million different versions. I have a version of this as a composite where I mix actually a few different versions of St. Jerome into one. I can show that on another episode. And this is in the Vatican, by the way. And this is right after the Raphael's Transfiguration, which if you've never seen, and I'd probably highlight as the biggest art moment of my life was walking into the Vatican and seeing Raphael's Transfiguration. I'll just bring that up here. Photo doesn't do it justice. And I'll never forget, someone took a tourist took a picture with a flash, and the Italian guard came out and was whisking her away, like, you can't be in this room anymore. And he's like, what do you think, this is a Matisse? He whisks her away. And this is the work, and Photos doesn't do this justice, and I think it was actually like these colors here. When you see them in person, I think this almost looks violet in person. I mean, they're astonishing. It's actually, I think, his last or second last work, one of his last works, and it's thought to have been completed by his assistants, I think, but later, I think they're saying, actually, we think it was mostly Raphael, and I suspect it was. I mean, it was astonishing. Raphael died at 37. Which is astonishing. I mean, very young so you just can't imagine what we have missed as a result. So continuing on, a beautiful work from Cap'n posted on Twitter called Time. I didn't see this minted anywhere, but it may be minted somewhere. Very cool, hey? And almost kind of glitchy, almost looks like video glitch applied to a you know, kind of 1-bit, you know, filter or who knows what. I don't know what Cap'n does, but it's beautiful, poetic, and colorful. So there it is. Let's see if he mints that. And here is, I don't think we've looked at this. No, this came out yesterday or today. Cap'n's Gift Shop cheese. So this is a piece of cheese, and look at how great this is. This sold already. And again, we just keep seeing this evolution of the artists as they do these series, and we see with each one there is an evolution. And I love how, you know, he's getting rid, just leaving the outline as a way of keeping it interesting, and these beautiful backgrounds here. So continuing on, chocolate bar, another kind of, you know, these are different solutions. You can, like, that's kind of how I see it. Again, I take this scientific, I see this as a form of science, but again, I call it qualitative science. It's a form of investigation, right? But it's of a different nature, of a non-number nature. And look at this with this great background. It has a completely different effect. And I feel like I learned something from that, whatever that is, you know, and these great colors. So chocolate bar and first aid. And this is for Tez Quake Aid. So keep the money coming, everyone. I'm sure as you do, I kind of wake up in the middle of the night and I just think of what that all meant, that earthquake. And yeah, frankly, it's too much to process. Look at how great this background is. So anyways, you can get a beautiful piece here by Cap'n's Gift Shop or Cap'n and support people who I'm sure still need the aid for the Tez Quake Aid for $250, edition of 50. Beautiful work. Tom Bombadiluss Sadness, poetic title. And I just adore Tom Bombadiluss's frame here. This 1-pixel frame of these gorgeous kind of, you know, 8-bit retro colors. And then you have the skull character in a spacesuit looking back at the Earth. And the signature there. And the interesting solution here, I mean, with the rings going out to fill the composition, right? And just to add dynamism to the composition. So interesting work from Tom Bombadiluss, still available for 9 Tezos, edition of 15, Sadness, poetic title. And this is from an artist who I've seen, I'll show you the artist actually, because you might recognize him. We've looked at his work before, or her work, their work. I don't know the name. But I love these two works here because it shows the, you know, Old Dirty Bastard and 2-pack, these rappers in profile, and it's super cool. Maybe I can quickly show that. Anyway, he has another work which is part of almost like, I've seen like 3 different artists do this, which is these fake video games. Was it Byte by Bit? And Ghost Shoes, who was actually the first NFT. If you look at my collection, you'll see the very first NFT in my Tezos collection is by Ghost Shoes, and it's of a fake video game front. And this is another one, I think. Eazy-E, Ruthless, press start, options, licensed by Nintendo. So pixel animation of Eazy-E created in Sprite by Emil Eklund 2023. So maybe that is the name of the artist here. So just kind of interesting. Yeah, and here they are. Here's Old Dirty B. And again, this is a family-friendly show here, so I try and avoid any extra exciting language here. I tell people, yeah, you can watch it with your kids, so welcome everyone. This is pretty hilarious. So mental barf with some social commentary. I think we can say barf with the kids. So commenting on the blue check mark, which is interesting, and yeah, so not loving the blue check mark here over with mental barf. I mean, again, there is a temptation. I get tempted just for the video, but until I actually put up video, because you can put up HD video, it's still $8 a month, and amazingly, this show still gets retweeted out pretty well, despite there being no verification there. So anyways, interesting commentary from MB. Continuing on, Dan Control. So I was looking for where this was minted, then I finally read the description. Dropping tomorrow, Heap, curated by Fake Whale XYZ. So this will be later on today, and it's a heap of chairs. And so classic we can say classic Dan control at this point in a simple horizon landscape. So very cool. And a work by Daniel W., The Tower. Is this new? Okay, yeah, this is definitely new. All black works are highly textured 3000 by 3000 PNGs using only black and white with tonal variation being made to use the halftones. So anyways, this looks, what it's reminiscent of is a tarot card with the tower, and I think you always have the lightning hitting it. So very cool work. Someone from Spain is trying to call me right now. We will call them back after. So anyways, cool work from Daniel W. Flora Marquez with a few works here. And it's kind of easy to forget just how interesting these are to me. Like, she seems to be tapping into almost like some sort of 19th century motifs here, or some sort of kids. And it's just very, really interesting work. There's so many decisions that are being made here. A unicorn on a stick. It feels like maybe children's books, but really sophisticated. I create as I speak, in a really nice description there. Edition of 1. How are we doing here? Okay, going to pick up the pace a bit here. 15 Tezos. Beautiful, beautiful here too. Love it is not the substance, but the recipient. So just very interesting and beautiful. And again, we see the artist evolving through this series here. And here's another one. Sometimes it is hard to start moving. So with one of these machines, again, feels like a 1940s children's book or something. Very fun. Almost like a Roald Dahl sort of feel to it, isn't it? So anyways, beautiful work from her. Ricano with some experimental works here. No more Solitaire. So playing very experimentally and signing his name here in the Windows Start button, Windows 95, and playing just with Windows here as a form of abstraction in a sense. And here we have Minesweeper, and we have a few of these. This is art from the 90s, is what this is called. Bit of a commentary there, perhaps. And it's just kind of interesting work. Click me or leave me. So I always applaud the experimentation here. And here you have crypto lovers in the window, crypto world misspelled. So just kind of interesting, and click me or leave me, and www.ricano.it. Again, signing the work in an interesting way. So buy now for 5, edition of 5. And a couple of works by MCHX, which are quite beautiful. These are one of ones that are available for 100 Tezos. So I don't think there's any volume here. So just beautiful color field work. I mean, it's kind of funny, like Mark Rothko, of course, you think of, and I'm sure these are kind of partly based on, I think MCHX has mentioned in comments, but from a purely, if I just came from an alien planet and I didn't know either artist, you may disagree with this, but maybe it's just because it's new, but I actually kind of enjoy these a little bit more. I find Rothko a little bit sentimental, overly sentimental, to be honest. But these I just kind of like, I don't find this overly sentimental. I find this just beautiful, and I like the speed at which it's done. And I almost feel like you get the impact of that idea of color fields, but you get so much more because it's kind of constantly in flux. So you're just getting that like times 100, an exponential color field painting, if you will. So anyways, and look at how beautiful it is. And so 100 Tezos to me is not a terrible price for such a work of art, a one of one. These are both called Digital Spring 1 and 2. Look at this, so fascinating work. 45 seconds long, like we didn't even have time to go through the whole thing. And there is so much to chew on there. Datura, edition of 10, Orb 191, just released. So continuing to explore Datura's route here with these kind of abstracted pixelation, kind of jarring pixelated abstraction here. Aleatory objects, so a new one in the series. Very cool. Sabato with some new glitch work here, anti-floral. And very, very interesting. I assume this is a GIF because it's just running here. And so, yeah, we'll take a look at what's going on here in a second. Pretty interesting. Data bending glitches source. WebM data bending glitches. Source footage captured at the Three Sisters Sanctuary in Massachusetts. So probably footage that Sabato took. Fragile Compositions, very nice title. 8 Tezos, edition of 10. So you got to love how Sabato is always experimenting and pushing the limits, right? And always trying new things. Again, to me, that shows range, okay? And he does it always in a very thoughtful way. This is one that was kind of interesting that I just saw, I think, on Twitter. We All Wear Masks, Imaginary, Real, Digital. This is by Tengushi, who is a new artist on the program, I think. And where you really see the transition from kind of a photo light pixelation to kind of a deep colored flat pixelation. So interesting work from Tengushi, edition of 20 by for 5. And a new one from Kota Nakazono, another abstraction here. So again, playing with the organic, liquid shape in the front and just interesting movement, almost glitchy movement in the background, hey? So interesting there, by for 5, edition of 11. Pretty small size, but I think that's cool. I think on the screens, we can go small, you can go really small. And people do. Look at Cap'n. And it works. Future Dinner Table 2, this is by 8so. Now my door is ringing, everything's happening here at once. So this was an interesting one because it wasn't an instantly recognizable work at first. I would almost guess like an ironing table if I had saw this without the title. But when you do see the title, you see what an awesome dinner table this is. And again, kind of that space age 70s vibe. So another beautiful work by 8so, one of one for 150 Tezos. And you can read the description there, all about your futuristic dinner table. Ex Mortal, a new discovery here in the last week or so, World Breaker. So a couple of works by Ex Mortal. So big shout out. Using vintage video mixing equipment, modular video synthesizers, video captured in real time. So just very cool. Pure 8, same thing. Well, actually different equipment here. Tachyon's Vortex decoder, video captured in real time. So it really is a whole area, a whole domain, this, video glitch art, and there's a lot. And here's Dr. Version, and this is also going to Tez Quake Aid, Polaroid particles, a very kind of warm and rich work. And so anyways, just beautiful, kind of, I guess you'd call it glitch. 100% of primary sales donated to Tez Quake Aid. So edition of 75, buy for only a Tezos 75. And quick note, so we were looking at Dr. Version's work yesterday, and I think it was the one that was flashing really hard. And I was like, I'm just going to look at this temporarily. Pocobelli, thanks for your response. It was about the same as mine after I minted Optics 001, the work in question. Thought it was a bit too much, so I burned those editions. Back to the drawing board to rework. I do not want to cause seizures. Yeah, and I just want to let you know, if I ever show a work here, like it's always a compliment, and it's always me saying, look at how great this is. So even though I was not wanting to cause seizures for the audience there, I thought it was an interesting work. Just so you know, like in a sense, the aggression of that work I found kind of actually quite interesting in and of itself. I mean, it's kind of a shocking work. So just so you know, in a sense, like it's not me going, oh, this isn't working. So it's me going, like, I thought it was quite interesting, just so you know. And that aggression, I found interesting. There's not many works that can make you go, I have to shut this down, even if they're flashing. Like that I thought it was a pretty interesting work. So just so you know, so big shout out to Dr. Version. And continuing on, Graphica.png, who mixes painting, AI, and collage to make these incredible works here. Vigilante number 1, inspired by Cosimo de' Medici. So a guy on a horse, almost looking like in riot gear. And so anyways, just kind of really unique mark making, for lack of a better term here, of this, person that seems to be on fire here. So just super original. I mean, it's really easy once you start seeing these works to forget I'd almost call it courage or boldness it takes to actually make these kind of aesthetic decisions. But then when you're consistent with it and then you put out several, you start to be persuaded. So I find it quite interesting, which is, again, why I continue to show it here. A new collage from Porta Malmar, who I really enjoy looking at, because there's kind of a very contemporary feeling to these collages, right? Because how do you make a collage feel contemporary? Well, you add mark making like you see here in this mask here, or you make these perfect circles so you have a reference to the digital. And even this here, you get the sense of it being a digital spray, or this perfectly square blue square here in the background here. So this contrast here, it's something I kind of work on with my Screen Memories series. This contrast of these digital shapes with kind of traditional, 19th century style academic painting, right? With all of its browns and gradients and, realism, so to speak, So interesting work, and here are other collages. Collage Exploration is a Ritual of Self-Knowledge by Porta Malmar. And I think I brought up another one, Birds Drawing. And again, we see that same kind of digital mark making here in these masks, and as well as in these orange marks here. And also in this super straight, again, to make these in the physical world, it's not as easy as it seems to make that straight line like that, or this perfect circle. So there's a digital quality to these collages that I quite like and find interesting. And a new one from Strange Thing, which already sold, so I missed this. This was on Valentine's Day that he minted it, and this went for 3 ETH to Scooney, so $5,100 these days. So nice work, Strange Thing, and a very interesting work here with what looks like Louis Vuitton branding, so to speak, on top of a king's kind of purple, I don't know if you'd call that a tunic or just, dress or whatever he's wearing, and beautiful fur kind of stuff. So anyway, it's just a really interesting, we'd call it rich work. And it looks like raw AI, and you see this with the goblet or whatever, the king's goblet. Really interesting kind of work by Strange Thing. And even just the hands and everything. The True King, and you can read all about it. This is part of kind of a narrative that he is building on Super Rare. It's kind of a story. So continuing on, Room 41 from Zoom, and I don't think we've seen this before, but you can see it kind of fits in the series, and it almost seems like half art studio, half couch. Maybe this is more of a couch, coffee table, and maybe this is a window. So I love how it's kind of dancing on the border between abstraction and representation, how you can't tell what everything is. Say like this green mark here, looks like just a big paint stroke, paint that's dripped or something. So it's pretty cool because it looks like it's all done in AI, digital art, AI artwork here. So cool work from Zoom. Edition of 15 for only 3 Tezos, pretty reasonable. And finally here, work by Kate Mary Art. So this is a physical work, again, I saw on Instagram, and again, big fan of her work as well. Really cool artist, great textures and everything. And this is called, there's no title, just some emojis there. And that is your show, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you again for all the support and everything, and showing your work. I'm having so much fun here. So until next time, take care.